Hey, good morning, everybody. I had a quick little scare. It kept saying, check my internet connection. So hopefully today we don't have any hiccups or bumps in the road. So I'm just going to give everyone a chance to get on. Good morning. I always love whenever y'all say good morning so that I know that you're out there. That makes this way easier. And so good morning, Carrie and Megan. They're the first people on. Hi, Katie. Anyway, so while we're waiting, I want to make sure, and I'm probably going to say this a couple of times, good morning, that there are, if you're planning on going to Israel, maybe just turn this off and don't see this one. Good morning. And if you have kids watching, because I know several of you have told me through the weeks that your kids maybe get up and watch or during the day, and we don't want any kids today unless they're in high school. Good morning. So if you're planning on going to Israel, don't watch today. And if you have somebody younger than high school watching, just don't let them watch today. So I hope everyone's got their Bibles open to chapter 16. That's where we're going to start. And we're going to go ahead and dig in because I think a lot of people are on now. So one more time, no kids, no Israel trippers going. So, chapter 16, I'm going to back up for a minute. Last Thursday, we were talking about chapter 14 and where Jesus fed the 5,000 and he was in Bethsaida. And so we spent quite a bit of time talking about what life was like in Bethsaida and all of those triangle cities, which was Chorazin, Capernaum, Bethsaida. This was a very strict Jewish community that... some of the smartest rabbis came out of this and scholars, but also they were very modest. They held tight to the traditions, and we talked about family and insula and how the community picked the bride for this, the son, and how he would go and build a home onto his parents' or his family's insula, and then he would go back and get his bride when his dad told him the room was ready, and the bride didn't know when he was coming. And there would be the street parade, and then the bride would jump in, and he would take her back to the house, and they would consummate the marriage. And I'm talking about this again today because it's important to where we're going. Remember, the best man and the maid of honor would sit outside the room while the whole wedding party was out, and then the groom would hand them proof that she was a virgin, and then they would all celebrate. So purity was very important. They held tight to these beliefs because they wanted to remain pure. So in chapter 15, good morning, everybody. I'm glad that you are joining us. I'm going to remind you, or something I've been saying earlier, if you're planning on going to Israel, just don't tune in today. And if you have any children, you don't want them watching today. So moving on to 15, which was on Tuesday, Jesus fed 4,000 people, and he was in Gentile territory at this time. And so he's coming back. It says that he's in Magadan at the end of chapter 15, and that is Jewish territory. And whenever he's there, some Pharisees and Sadducees come up and they ask him for a sign. And at this point, I think we all have to laugh because as if he's not giving them a million signs. Everywhere he goes, that's all he does is heal the sick and set the captives free, and the lame can walk and the blind can see, and all of this prophecy is being fulfilled. But the Jewish community had this belief that, or something rabbis taught, that a demon could perform these type of miracles on earth, but only God could perform miracles in the sky. So that's what they were asking him for. And, he kind of scolds them and tells them that they can't see the signs of the time. They're blind because they are rejecting him, and they're never going to see, no matter what he does, because they are spiritually blind. And it's a decision that they've made. They are rejecting him, and that's not allowing them to see truth. And so he says, the only sign I'm going to give you is the sign of Jonah, which is symbolic of death, because Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days, just like Christ is going to die. He's going to be in the grave for 3 days, and then resurrection. It's not really a whale, a large fish. A large fish is going to spit Jonah out. Well, Jesus is going to resurrect from the grave. And he said, that's the only sign that I'm going to give you. And, they still deny it, even with the sign of Jonah. So then he starts talking to his disciples about the leaven and bread, and they think that he's talking about physical bread, and they start worrying that they didn't bring the leftovers from the 4,000. And what he's teaching them is something spiritual again. He's saying two things, because it's the Pharisees and Sadducees. He's saying, beware of the legalism of the Pharisees. They were legalistic. They lost God's whole heart in trying to keep a million laws. And that's all they were worried about, is keeping the laws, and they weren't worried about people and reaching them and loving on them. And then he said, you need to beware of the liberalism of the Sadducees. The Sadducees were a different sect. They were the more wealthier people, and they were also higher in the temple system. The chief priest and the high priest were Sadducees, and they thought, they didn't believe in heaven or angels or resurrection. Basically, they discounted a lot of the Bible. And so the book of Colossians is going to be addressing liberalism, and the book of Galatians is going to be discussing and confronting the legalism. So those are two books you can study about how the disciples address that. So moving on to what is maybe a little sketchy for kids. After this conversation, he goes and takes his disciples 25 miles north of Galilee to a town called Caesarea Philippi. Now, this is there's two Caesareas in the region, and we've already talked about one, I believe. It's known as Caesarea by the Sea, and if you look on your map, it's on the Mediterranean coast. That is not where he is. He is 25 miles just north of Galilee, and this place is called Caesarea Philippi. It was originally called Pania. It is a Gentile land, and Herod Philip II is the tetrarch there, and so he rules and reigns, and he renamed this place Caesarea after and to honor Caesar, and then to distinguish it from the other, he attached his name to it. So it's Caesarea Philippi, honoring both Caesar and Herod Philip II. It's known for its beautiful waterfalls. There's natural springs that are springing up out of here. There's lush vegetation. And this was a place known for Roman soldiers to come and relax. It was called Roman Shalom. Remember, shalom meaning peace? Well, this was a place of their peace, and everything was in abundance. And so we have Mount Hermon there, and all of what we're going to talk about is happening on the base of Mount Hermon. So I attached a picture the other day, and I hope you had a chance to look at it. And it is a picture of the base of Mount Hermon, and it's the Rock of the Gods. And so you saw a big, huge cave, a enormous opening, and then if you kind of zoomed in, you could see little niches cut out in the mountains. And this is called the Rock of the Gods, and there are shrines everywhere where people would come and worship Caesar, and they would worship another god that we're going to talk about in a minute. But that huge cave, that huge opening is known as the Gates of Hades. And in it was a huge pool, and they said that they couldn't even really reach the bottom. It just went down deep, deep, deep. And that was believed, where it was a belief that the Canaanite god Baal, that's where he would enter and exit from the underworld. And so you had that, the Gates of Hades, where Baal would enter and exit, and then you had the temples built for Caesar and there's worship going on, and then you had a lot of statues built for a god named Pan. And that's what we're going to talk about for a little bit. Pan is a mythological half-goat, half-man creature. He is the god of flocks and shepherds. And a lot of times in like a Midsummer's Night Dream or different things, you might see him playing a panpipe. And that the story goes that he was chasing a nymph to have her for his own, and she ran from him, and before he could catch her, she turned herself into a bunch of reeds, and he cut her down and turned her into a pipe, and now she goes everywhere he goes. And so that is Pan. And at the base of this mountain, next to the Gates of Hades, was a huge statue of Pan, half man, half goat, and his man parts were erect. And then there would be worship going on all around him. And all of these other niches cut in the mountain were nymphs that were there for his pleasure. And in Pan worship, it was described as unbridled lust, alluring, and then frightening. And that's where we get the word panic from Pan worship. The worshipers that would come out would perform orgies, and then they would do sexual acts with goats. And so this was really gross. It was perverted. And Roman soldiers would come and just partake in all of this and watch and be a part of, and this is what they relaxed. This was their relaxing place. But I want us to picture this for a minute, and it was so important for you to understand what Bethsaida looked like with pure, wholesome beliefs and standards and morality. And Jesus walks his disciples, who Peter, we think, is maybe 20. The rest of them go down to probably, they're between 10 and 20. These are little boys and teenagers. And he walks them from their little, pure, teeny tiny, modest community where everything was about keeping yourself pure. And he walks them here. The first time that we talked about this summer with Tabitha and Morgan, the mom came out of Tabitha and she kept saying, why did Jesus bring these boys there? Because it was complete perversion. It was Mardi Gras on steroids. And these innocent boys who have probably never even dreamed or imagined of a place like this, here they are. So Jesus looks at them and says, who do people say that the Son of Man are? And they, I'm sorry. Are y'all out there? Because my phone is acting like it's not live anymore. If y'all can say hi real quick, that would help to know that I'm not just talking to myself. Or punch something. Okay, I see one person. Okay, so y'all can hear me? Okay, good. I thought that I lost everybody. Yay! Okay, thank y'all. So Jesus looks and says, who do people say I am? And they say that that he's John the Baptist, that he's a prophet. They list all these things, and this is where it gets really good. This is one of my favorite parts in all of Matthew. He looks at them at this point and says, who do you say that I am? Now, he's been performing all of these miracles. He's been fulfilling prophecy. The disciples, they have seen that he is the Messiah, but finally he asked them point blank, who do you say that I am? And Peter, who is the most passionate out of the group, he's the leader of the group, he's the oldest, he says, and I can just imagine when he says this, like, again, Pan worship going on, little boys from a little modest community. And Jesus says, who do you say that I am? I can just imagine Peter yelling out, you are the Messiah, Son of the living God. And I cry every week, I'm sorry. But this is just such an amazing part because they're saying that you are a living God. You're not a statue. You're not a half man goat statue that people are doing perverted things with. You are the living God. And this is where Jesus responds, and it says that and Jesus responded in verse 17, Simon, son of Jonah. And remember, Simon means sifting sand. So he says, sifting sand, you are blessed because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter. And this is the first time that Jesus is going to address Simon as Peter. We've seen it in Matthew, but that's because Matthew wrote this way, way, way later when he's known to the world as Peter. But this is the first time Jesus addresses him. So he starts off by saying, sifting sand, you are blessed, and now I say to you that you are Peter. And Peter means Petra in Greek, which is a rock. It's hard, it's stable, it's what you want to build on. And he says, and upon this rock I will build my church. Not this rock of the gods, but upon this rock, Peter, I'm going to build my church. And then he points, I can just imagine this, he points to that huge open cave and he says, and the gates of Hades and all of this wickedness will not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth is already and whatever you bind on earth is already bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth is already loose in heaven. And he gave orders to the disciples to tell no one that he was the Messiah. And so at this point, he's saying, y'all are the new way of worshiping God. I'm going to give you, not the rabbis, not the chief priest, not the high priest. I'm going to give you authority. That's what the keys of the kingdom are. I'm going to give you authority, and whatever you bind and loose. Basically, remember the rabbis use this term for teaching everyone all the law and what's permitted and what's not permitted. And he's saying, forget that. They got lost in it. They turned into legalism. They took my heart out of it. I'm going to give you the authority, and you are going to go and teach what is permitted and what is not permitted in my kingdom. And so this is such a turning point, and it's so emotional. And again, like I say, wickedness is happening, and he says, I'm going to build my church on you, and none of this is going to prevail against it. Now, we're going to talk for just a minute. I'm going to read you an article because I can't say it as good as Ray Vanderlyn wrote it. But when asked why on earth would Jesus bring his disciples, his little sweet, innocent disciples, to such a wicked place, Ray Vanderlyn is really, he does tours to the Holy Land, and he has a whole series for, decades he's done this, and he's the guy that everybody looks to and learns from when they do their study tours. And he has a series with Focus on the Family where you can actually purchase In the Dust of the Rabbi, and you can watch it in your own home. You don't have to go to Israel, which it wouldn't be the same, but if you can never go, it would be good. So he wrote this: why would Jesus choose the filthiest place within walking distance of his early ministry to have this conversation? And this is his answer. This is, let's see, it might be that he took his disciples to the most degenerate place to possibly say to them, this is where I want you to build my church. I want you to go out into the repugnantly degenerate places where God is not known. I want you to go out to these places and that make Caesarea Philippi look tame, and that is where I want you to build my church. And that's exactly what they did. They went to places in Asia Minor and to the ends of the earth where gods were worshipped in unspeakable, awful manners, and where Christians would be persecuted in a horrific manner, and they gave their lives to do exactly what they were told to do by their rabbi. I'm sorry that I'm a pansy and I cry every single time, but this is so true. They're going to go to Asia Minor after this, where this is tame, and they're going to see incredible, awful godlessness. But they do this because they have the heart of God, and God is saying, I'm here for not only my people who are going to reject me, I'm here for everybody in the world, and I want them to know the truth. And it says that they're going to give their lives for it. And these Bethsaida boys, I'm looking for my notes, I'm all confused. These Bethsaida boys, Peter, Andrew, and Philip, all three of them, Peter's going to be crucified upside down. I don't know if y'all can see that. Andrew is going to be crucified, his brother. Philip is going to be martyred. Really, every single one of these disciples, besides Judas, who commits suicide, and John, who's going to die of old age, the rest of them are going to be martyred in a gruesome and horrific way because of their beliefs. But they were willing to do this so that you and I today in America, 2,000 years later, can sit and do a Bible study and worship God and get to know Jesus on a personal level. And so that's why I get emotional, because of their faith. And these are just little boys. They're teenage boys, and they're going to go and do this for us so that we can worship today. And so then it says in verse 21, from then on, Jesus began to point out to the disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders, chief priests, and the scribes, to be killed and raised on the third day. That from then on means that this is going to be a conclusion of one section and a new major section of the Bible. And so we're starting a whole new section. Here Peter is going to pull him aside, just like any loved one would do, and say, there's no way, bro, that we're going to let this happen to you. And Jesus basically calls him Satan, says, get behind me, Satan, because this is the will of the Father. So this is something that must be done. And then he goes to him and talks about what it is like to take up their cross and follow him. And I think we just spoke about that. Taking up their cross and following God is dying to yourself, whatever your plans are, whatever you want in life, is saying, you know what, I'm going to lay that down. I'm going to carry my cross. That term was started because for Roman execution, they made whoever they were executing carry part of their cross to their death. And it was to show the whole city that they have to submit to the authority that they once rejected. And so basically we've all rejected, before we accepted Christ as our Savior, we rejected him. And now we're taking up our cross. And basically what's that saying is, he's not wanting to torture us. He's wanting us to say, you know what, I'm in full submission to you where I once wasn't. And full submission is looking like, for these boys, okay, we're going to leave our homeland and we're going to go to a very wicked place where people hate us and they're going to kill us, but we're going to tell thousands and thousands of people along the way about the goodness of God. Thank goodness, us in America, we don't have to live like that, but it might be that we adjust our lives in a way that isn't just solely for our pleasure, but it is for reaching other people, just like the disciples did. Anyway, it's one of my favorite lessons. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you on Tuesday with chapter 17. Have a great day.